Holy freaking hell. This is starting to get really spicy and I'm here for all this drama. Alright, that PlayStation Showcase let me down with the content that was actually in the PlayStation Showcase. The one thing that is keeping me entertained thoroughly is the super hardcore PlayStation fanboys. The aftermath, their anger at PlayStation is just hilarious to me. Alright, one of the things that everyone wanted to see was Naughty Dog's new faction game. It was set to be kind of this multiplayer live service game that got everyone super excited because if you're a PlayStation fanboy, the one thing that you gotta do is you gotta worship Naughty Dog and the team behind The Last of Us. Now, let me be honest, I'm not the biggest Naughty Dog fan. I was when they made things like Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, even the Uncharted games that they made. I'm fans of those games. This Last of Us stuff, I'm not really a big fan of The Last of Us. I never really got into me. I remember, like, I was really into The Walking Dead, so The Last of Us kind of just felt very Walking Dead kind of, and I just didn't really, I don't know, I didn't really jive with Ellie or any of the characters. None of it was really fun for me, and the gameplay was very boring. And I never even played Last of Us 2, so I don't know. I don't know what the whole thing about that is. Alright, so this brings us to this news article that came out by one Jason Schreier. So pretty much Jason Schreier stated in this news article that the Factions game was delayed after Bungie took a look at it and wasn't really a fan of it. They said it needs more work. And then pretty much shortly before this news article broke, Naughty Dog released like a tweet stating how they had to keep cooking on the Factions game, that it's not really exactly where they want it to be, but that they're proud of where they made so far, but they still have more work, etc., etc. We've heard this before from Naughty Dog. We heard this before about the Factions game, but I think it's very interesting now that Bungie is thrown into this mix. I was very surprised and kind of taken back with everyone else's surprise, the fact that Bungie has this kind of pull when it comes to these multiplayer live service games. I think a lot of people were really expecting that PlayStation bought Bungie for games, which didn't make sense because Destiny was multi-plat, and then now we know that Marathon is going to be multi-plat. It was pretty much in their contract that Bungie would be able to make games for different platforms. So I think people were like wondering, why the hell did PlayStation spend, $1 billion on Bungie when they're not even going to have their exclusive games exclusive to PlayStation? Well, Bungie is a team that's developed one of the biggest live service games and one of the longest live service games running, and that's Destiny. And they've proven that they know and they've mastered keeping people engaged for a very long time. They hired Bungie for this reason alone, their expertise, so that they can help consult and guide all their other live service teams, Naughty Dog included. Alright, I feel like this pisses off a lot of people because a lot of people worship Naughty Dog as kind of like this peak pinnacle of gaming. And I'm not going to take away any of their talents. The team at Naughty Dog is phenomenal when it comes to their technological advances with graphics, storytelling. A lot of their gameplay is pretty impressive. They're a team that really knows how to make games really, really well. They know how to make really compelling stories. So I'm not going to discredit Naughty Dog as a developer. I do got to realize, though, and what I think people need to realize is that Naughty Dog isn't really a multiplayer developer. They don't really make multiplayer games. They don't really make live service games. This is a new area for them, and it's kind of an unknown. Bungie, on the other hand, is the expert in this. So if Naughty Dog is smart, they're going to follow Bungie's lead on this one. If Bungie tells them, hey, this game isn't ready to release yet, they need to keep cooking on it. And I feel like people were very upset by this because for a couple reasons. One, Naughty Dog is their god. Two, they've played Factions back in Last of Us 1, and a lot of people can agree that it is a very fun game. The basis of that multiplayer is fun. I'm not going to argue that. What I am going to tell you is there's more to a live service game than just the core gameplay, just the core world. If you look at Halo Infinite is a very, very fun game fundamentally. It just lacks things like content. It lacks things like a roadmap. These are things that Destiny developers, Bungie, understand. So when we hear Bungie told Naughty Dog essentially that the game isn't ready to release, so they have to keep cooking, it doesn't necessarily mean that the game is bad. And I think that's where people kind of took offense and they went immediately on the attack. That how can Naughty Dog make a bad game? They make phenomenal games. How is Faction bad? I played Faction back in Last of Us. That's fine. The game could be fine and fun and whatever. But if it's still missing the core components of what makes a live service game a long running service, then they need to keep cooking, because they can't release this game with only half a plan. We saw that with Rumbleverse, Multiverses, all these other things like Knockout City. All these live service games that fail is because they get the core gameplay and they think it's fun, release it, and a lot of them are fun fundamentally, but because they lack things like content, because they lack things like keeping a roadmap in place, releasing content at a certain cadence, they lack those things that are going to keep people wanting to play these games. So yeah, I generally believe that Bungie looked at this game, looked at their plan, and said that this wasn't really going to keep people engaged for like 2-3 years, so that they had to keep working on it and make sure that they release it right, because you only have one chance to make that first impression, and they have to make sure that they make the right impression very early on. So I mean, again, I'm not saying that that's exactly what happened, but that's what it sounds like to me is what happened. The next thing I think that concerns a lot of people is the fact that if PlayStation sided with Bungie on this and not Naughty Dog, who is like their premier team, their, you know, when you think of PlayStation and their whole game plan of having these single player narratives, and Naughty Dog with things like The Last of Us has pretty much been that like peak pinnacle, what everyone's trying to hit, that kind of storytelling, that level of like complexity when it comes to characters and stuff like that. So when people see that PlayStation sided with Bungie on this, who's kind of like the new people inside of like the PlayStation ecosystem, and that gets people scared, because PlayStation as a brand is changing. It's no longer just gonna be the single player narratives that people fell in love with them for, and I get that. And Naughty Dog symbolizes the PlayStation that y'all fell in love with from like the PS4, PS3 era, and Bungie kind of symbolizes this new move into live service games for PS5. So it gets people concerned. It makes people a little defensive over what they've known PlayStation to be. And what I think people need to understand is that the single player narratives aren't going anywhere. They're not prioritizing live services over single players. It's just that they already have an efficient method of getting single player games out into the pipeline, into the world. Right now what they're doing is they're creating a new efficient way to create another style of game that helps diversify their portfolio, so they can help keep other players engaged as well. And again, people are scared that if they focus too much on live service games, it means you won't be able to focus in on the single player narratives, which I feel like people are misconstruing this. And the reason why they bought Bungie is so that Bungie can focus on the live service games, they can focus in on the single player narrative games. Because it's not like you hear Bungie coming in and consulting Santa Monica on God of War Ragnarok. You know, like those games are still going to be left up to the developers to do what they do best. But these new teams like Haven, Firewalk, Firesprite, and even Naughty Dog, as far as being a live service team, are going to have to need guidance. They're going to need help on how they're going to be able to proceed forward and keep people engaged into this new era of what PlayStation's trying to do. PlayStation isn't getting rid of their single player narratives. One game at the PlayStation Showcase was like the highlight, the main event, and it wasn't Haven's game, it wasn't Firewalk's, it wasn't Bungie's, it was Insomniac Spider-Man 2, a single player narrative game that PlayStation knows is their bread and butter. They're not getting rid of that in exchange for something like fair games. Alright, well that ends my final thoughts on this topic. Let me know down below what you guys think. Do you guys agree with Bungie? Do you guys agree with this new move into live service? Or this pisses you off, or this hates you? Let Naughty Dog cook. Let Naughty Dog do what they want to do. Whatever. I don't care. Like the video if you guys enjoyed the video. Dislike it if you guys didn't like the video. And make sure you guys subscribe. See you guys in the next video.